Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads and a catch-up. It's January 31st and I've been gone for 2 weeks, and I am really glad that January is leaving. January just turned out to be a stinker, and I'm ready to step forward into something else. It just wasn't good, folks. So let me tell you a little bit about my absence in case you haven't been around. And I've started this video over a bunch of times because I found myself just getting too far into the details. And so I'm going to try to sum it up kind of quickly. Stephen and I have been in South Carolina the past 2 weeks. The original purpose of this trip was to help move my mother into a dementia memory care facility. Her dementia has been progressing rapidly, and it had become too complicated for my stepfather to manage around the clock on his own. And I had been out there a few weeks ago. We had some home health care to help him out in the interim. And then there was this master plan, which, you know, what happens to master plans. So in between the two trips, she became ill. She was hospitalized. She had aspiration pneumonia, which is very common with dementia patients. She developed a lot of she didn't just now develop eating problems. They've been kind of gradually worsening. But anytime a person with advanced dementia has an illness or an injury, hospitalization, it tends to accelerate their condition and the problems they are having. So that's what was happening. So when we got there, she was moved to the memory care facility. We finished doing some things to make her room more comfortable and attractive and things that she would like to have. And we visited with her each day. And this was a very valuable time for us. She was still able to walk and talk, and she knew who all of us were. So we were able to enjoy being with her, but her condition was clearly declining. And so I knew when we were originally supposed to leave last Saturday that I would be back soon. But we needed to at least go home and take care of some things, even if we had to come back very soon. And before we left, I did get her enrolled in hospice care. Well, we never did leave on that original scheduled time, because on the morning that we were supposed to leave, when we were on our way to visit her once more before we left, suitcases in the car, we received word that she had actually passed away that morning. Needless to say, there was a grand flurry of plans were changing, flights rescheduled, things canceled, and then the usual things that you have to do when somebody passes away. So it just was a real frenzy and a blur of activity for a couple of days. So our trip was extended for several days so that we could be there for all of those things and those plans and be there for her service. I just want to say thank you to everyone who left comforting messages on my community posts or in other groups that I am in with you. I appreciate each and every one of those sweet and thoughtful comments. It's really a blessing that she went quickly, she went without pain. Now that all of the commotion of all that is finished and we are back home, I can relax and just have and reflect on her and her life and our life together. I haven't had time to do that yet because there's just been so much going on. So I'm really happy to be home. January was just stressful and kind of horrendous. So now it's a time that is sort of sad, but at least it's peaceful, and that I can handle. Let us move on into other things that we usually talk about on Friday Reads. TV shows. Set a lot of them aside while we were away. And you know what we watched while we were there? We would sit up in the bedroom, and on the iPad we started watching Arrested Development, which we had never seen before. And I know it's old. It started in 2003 or something like that. And we just needed something funny and mindless and silly, and so that definitely was fitting the bill. So we will continue watching that. And now that we're back, we're going to return to the other shows. We finished watching the 4-part, what is it called? Wait a minute. I can't remember what it's called. It's a Swedish Netflix thing based on a nonfiction book, and it has to do with how some detectives used genealogical research to solve an old case. I'm going to put the name up there. It was pretty good. It wasn't that great. It was all right. And then we're going to return to watching The Pitt, which is a hospital drama on Max. It's really good. And we decided to rewatch season 1 of Severance before we started season 2 because it's been so long. And we really love that show. And we thought there's probably a lot of little pieces and layers and stuff that we'll benefit from rewatching. So we started that last night. So that's the TV roundup. So what about the books? Well, it's not going to sound like a 2 week or 2 or 3 or whatever weeks. It's not going to sound like it because I really didn't get that far or finish that many things for the amount of time that was covered for obvious reasons. The first book that I finished was just a wonderful book for a troubling time, and that was Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. This was her debut novel. She's gone on to write many, many wonderful books. She writes middle grade fiction, sometimes younger, like beginning reader and picture books. My friend Michael Clark and I are reading her work in chronological order, and this was the first book, so because it was her debut. It was an honor book for the Newbery Award that year, and it is an absolute jewel. It is a quiet gem. And I have said this before, some of the most emotionally satisfying novels of my life are books that would be classified as middle grade fiction. There's just something so wonderfully rewarding about the characters and the themes and the resolutions of middle grade fiction sometimes that are harder to find in adult fiction. And there's just quiet gems galore if you consider that section of your library as a possibility. You don't have to be somebody who has children or works with children or you're going to read it to children. Just read it for yourself because there are some wonderful, wonderful gems in the children's section. And this is one of them. This book was published in the year 2000, and it is about a little girl, a 10-year-old girl named India Opal Buloni. The name has caused her some problems. It's Buloni, but you can imagine what kids that age probably say. And she has recently moved to a small town in Florida with her father, who is a preacher. Her mother left a number of years ago. It's a source of sadness to her and her father, and who has been reluctant to talk about her mother very much, but gradually begins to sort of warm up and share some things with her during the course of the book. And she is kind of lonely and at wit's end in this new town. It's a wonderfully quirky, small southern town. And right at the beginning, she finds Winn-Dixie, a big, shaggy, boisterous, friendly dog that she rescues from a Winn-Dixie grocery store where he is creating havoc. And she steps up and claims that it is her dog and rescues him so that he won't be sent off to animal control. And she brings him home and announces that he is staying. And he is just a fantastic character. He's a people whisperer. Everywhere they go, he makes friends and breaks the ice, and he's just fantastic. And so this is about Opal. She goes by her middle name, Opal, going about town and making an assortment of offbeat and unusual friends. It's about found family. It's about coming to terms with both the joy and the sadness in your life and how all of it is necessary. It's beautifully written. It could be sappy, and it's not. Kate DiCamillo was a master right from her very first novel. So a lot of people are talking right now about needing to have a stockpile of warmer natured books, books that sort of address the troubles in your soul. Definitely put that one on your list if you're looking for books like that. Because of Winn-Dixie, I read it in my role as a teacher, as a librarian, as a mother, and now just reading it for myself. Again, so good. So Winn-Dixie was, as I said, a buddy read with my friend Michael, and the next book that I actually finished was a gift from my friend Michael, I Feel Bad About My Neck by Nora Ephron. This was part of a Christmas gift that he sent me, and it was already sustaining my soul before I went on that trip, and then I didn't bring it with me. When I got home the other day, I realized that I still had a couple of essays left that I hadn't finished. I was so excited, partly because the book wasn't yet finished, and the other part was I had this personal challenge to read at least one nonfiction book every month. And last year, that was when I started the challenge, and I hit it every month. I never broke the streak. And then this year started, it's January, and I was reading a different book. This was the nonfiction book I had selected, but I didn't take it on the trip. And my plan was, when I got home, I had a whole week to read the rest of this book. And I was only about a quarter of the way through. But I thought, well, that will be fine. This is the book. I'll come back and I'll read the book. Well, as you know, the trip got extended. So I come home and I thought, oh no, I only have 2 days left to read all of this, or else I have to fail in my nonfiction book every month right off the bat in January. And then I remembered that, hey, Nora Ephron's book is nonfiction and I'm almost finished. Woohoo! So I read the rest of the book last night. I laughed. It was wonderful. And now I've hit my goal. So I'm still going to read the rest of the Tea and China book, but it's going to cross over into February. This book, it's great. There are certain things, it really holds up. It stands the test of time, even though there's certain references that are out of date, but the overall humor and her personality really hold up. It is so funny. She does have an essay towards the end of this book that is about reading called On Rapture, and I just loved this essay. She talks about how there's that feeling, that transcendent, rapturous feeling when a book is so good that you're just teleported out of reality, and how that happens more when you're a kid than when you're an adult. Like when you're a kid, it just hits you book after book, and then when you're an adult, it's a little bit more elusive. But she talks about the books that feel like that to her. She also talks about something that I could really relate to, where she can remember where she was sitting when she read certain books. She has a chronicle in her mind of what she was reading on all the couches of her life. And that got to me thinking, I can kind of chronicle the couches that way too. I can think of key books that I read on certain couches or in certain bedrooms facing certain directions. And so I just really loved that essay and many more from I Feel Bad About My Neck. So this was the most perfectly timed gift. Thank you again, Michael. And I finished it last night. Loved it. I will be reading it again. It's going to be one of those ones that I pick up when I just need a comfort and a laugh once again. But it was terrific. And we are now planning to read Heartburn together in March. I might even finish another nonfiction book in January, because I started reading Apple of My Eye by Helene Hanff, who of course wrote 84 Charing Cross Road. And the sequel, is it The Duchess of some street. I've read those books, very fun. Keep those in mind. That topic's coming back in an upcoming video. This book I purloined from a table in my mother's living room, where a whole lot of books were, as something that I felt like I could handle and I could read on the plane coming home. I knew I could count on Helene for some laughs and to be kind of low-key and non-demanding, and yet be of quality. And she has come through. So this book is about, it's really funny. She was commissioned to write the copy for a photographic book for New York tourists. As a long-time and well-known New York City resident. This is in the 70s. So she was commissioned to write about these New York landmarks. And so she gets all excited. She goes to the library. She makes a list of the most frequently mentioned must-see landmarks of New York. And then she has this jarring moment when she realizes that she herself has not visited most of the landmarks. And you know that happens. If you live in a city with famous attractions, sometimes you just kind of never go to those things because they're touristy. So she calls up a good friend of hers who has lived in New York since the day she was born to help her out, and the friend confesses, the friend, whose name is Patsy, that she too has never gone to any of these places. So this book is about Helene and Patsy's adventures traveling through parts of New York City that have always been there that they haven't spent time investigating. Some things kind of familiar to them, other things that they've never gone to, trying to figure out what they think is important to tell these imaginary potential tourists, and all of their misadventures and getting lost and eating in the wrong place, and it's just all kinds of, it's just very funny. The book was published in the 70s, but it looks like at the end this is like an 80s edition, and she put in some updates. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm enjoying this very, very much, and I'll have some final words on it next week. I am also reading A Crack in the Wall by Claudia Pineiro on my iPad. Yes, I am embarking on the world of e-reading a little bit, and I borrowed that from the Houston Public Library. And that is the latest book in an ongoing project with an amazing group of readers. The Pineiro group is what we are called. And we have been reading the translated works of Claudia Pineiro, an Argentine writer. And a lot of her books are classified as crime fiction, but there's always more to them than that. And she has a tendency to go ahead and tell you all about, not all about the crime, but what actually the crime was. You're not building up waiting to see who gets murdered. You find that out at the beginning, and then the book is more about how this happened, what happened leading up to it, why did it happen, character studies of the people involved, and lots of social commentary. And so in this book, which I'm only going to say a little bit about because the conversation is ongoing, but it is about an architect named Pablo, and all of her books take place in Buenos Aires. So an architect named Pablo, who works in a small firm with two other people. Pablo's kind of having a midlife crisis at home and at work, and he reveals right at the beginning that 3 years previous, he and his two associates, something happened that resulted in a man who is buried in the concrete foundation beneath the building that they work in. And early in the story, a young woman comes into the office asking some questions about that man. Have they talked to him or seen him or have any contact information for him? So that's where we start off, where we don't know why or how this happened, that the man is down in the concrete. And then we get to know more about Pablo and his life and his state of mind and what's going on with him. And it's kind of odd. It's interesting and very odd. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because we are reading it and talking about it right now. But enjoying the book, and even more than that, enjoying the group. Also with the Bard group from that Melinda at Web of Stories hosts, I am reading the February Shakespeare book, Much Ado About Nothing. And I'm also reading that on my iPad. January book was Antony and Cleopatra, and I opened it up. This was when I was in South Carolina. I opened it, I thought about the plot, I looked at the cast of characters, I closed it and loaded Much Ado About Nothing and said, we're going to just bypass that and go straight on to the comedy and the story with which I'm familiar. So I'm reading that one instead. So that's how that's going. And then, as I mentioned already, I am still reading For All the Tea in China by Sarah Rose, which is about a Victorian crime, a Victorian corporate or fraud. The British is seeking to steal the secrets of tea cultivation from China so that they can transplant that into the Himalayas, into British controlled territory, and cut off the necessity of doing tea trade with China. So I'm going to come back to that. Then I'm going to have some room to start something new this weekend. I will be going into my February TBR in a couple of days. I think that as far as February lineup, I'm going to start with A Raisin in the Sun. Since this is part of the Endless Drama event that I'm hosting, I figure I better get on top of that. So A Raisin in the Sun is one of our February selections, and I have never read it. This is a school textbook copy, so it has the play and some other related pieces as well. So I think I'm going to get going on that. And then something else I'm thinking about that's not really related to my official February TBR, but I might go ahead and read the next book in the Tales of the City series that I have been reading. I don't even know how long it's been now. I don't know. There's 10 books in all, and I've been gradually reading them. So Marianne in Autumn is the next one that feels like a comforting thing to read. But I'm also kind of thinking about jumping into Barchester Towers. I read the first book, The Warden. That's what it was. This is the second book in a 6-book series. It's a Victorian series by Anthony Trollope. So I don't know. I mean, I'm in a funny state of mind, so I might not read either of those. I might just go a whole different direction. But that's what I'm thinking about. I'm definitely going to finish the things that I am in midstream and start Raisin in the Sun. Whatever else I do, we'll just have to see. And like I said, I will be back in a couple days. I would have done my February TBR already by now, but, you know, circumstances. So I will be doing that sometime this weekend. And that's it. That's it for now. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.